What's up, y'all? Grab your notepad and paper or your cell phone because I'm about to give y'all some game on some of the biggest differences between the California prison politics, the state of California prison politics, and the federal prison politics in California. Now, there's a lot of people that really don't know because when you go on YouTube and you look for different, prison channels out of California or dealing with California politics, they're always talking about the state prison. But nobody that I know of is really out there talking about the federal prison politics in California. So, because depending on where you go geographically, the politics can change. But, for whatever reason, people love California politics. So buckle your seat up and get ready because I'm going to start doing a series of videos because, again, there's a lot of people that don't know. So my channel is going to officially be set apart from the other channels because all the stuff y'all be learning about, California prison stuff, it's on the state side. So again, we're going to start talking about stuff on the Fed side. So buckle up, read the disclaimer down there. I don't need to go through it. Y'all can read the disclaimer. So let's get into it. So one of the, and now the differences that I'm going to talk about, I'm not going to go over every single one. I'm just going to go over some of the bigger ones that, you should know. So when it comes to, say, the state of California prison, right? You have your COs and then you have your peace officers, right? So they could be wearing the green outfit. They could be wearing a shirt and tie or whatever, but they're all peace officers. So those are the ones, generally speaking, that are going to respond to the fights. They're going to get involved. They're going to do the use of force, all that kind of stuff. Now, as far as your people that are teachers, your medical people, your food service, I think I might have said that already, psychology, religious people, all that stuff, excuse me, they're considered to be free staff. So they don't respond to that stuff and they don't get involved unless, from what I was told by, some people, unless it's like a real serious deal emergency. So outside of that, the only people that get involved are going to be your sworn peace officers, whether they be in the uniform or dressed up in clothes, whatever. Now, on the Fed side, it's totally different because every single staff member that works in the federal prison, they're considered to be correctional officers first. So that means, yes, you have your COs on the block that's working in the unit, but no matter what your position is, you're still considered a CO. So let's say, you have a teacher and a psychologist standing out talking, and then they see inmates fighting. Well, that teacher and that psychologist, they got spray, they got all that stuff. They're officers. It's just that they have a specialty job. So that changes the game quite a bit because, again, on the state side, you just have one set of people that can do it. But in the feds, everybody can. So let's say, for instance, right, if you had a situation and, a CO, did use of force, he has to go away to do a video. Well, somebody has to watch that block while he's gone. Well, you could have a teacher do it. You could have somebody in the kitchen come out to do it. You can have somebody in education do it. You can have somebody in recreation do it. They can, all those different people, even in human resources, right? You technically speaking, let's say if a cop, got in something and they had to step away or whatever, and they needed to fill that spot, they could even call on people that work in HR to work that post on the block. So that is a very huge difference because you can have a response from anybody and everybody. Now, here's one of the other big differences. Now, it's a little different now in the state prison because from what I understand, a lot of like your black hands, your AB, NLR, all that stuff, they were like locked away and they pretty much like threw away the key where they would just, if they were identified as a gang leader or whatever, they would just put on just, lockdown and shoot. So they would never come out. So now it's different from what I understand, right? So some of them or a lot of them, they do get to come out. But there was a time that when they didn't come out on the Fed side, black hands, Nazi lowriders, AB, all that, they could walk the yard. And I know personally, like there's been at the joints that I've worked, I could say personally, I've probably seen like at most maybe like 5 or 6 black hands, at a particular institution, just walking the yard freely. Now, I'm going to give you a quick example, right? I ain't going to say the name because if I said the name of this person, it would probably send shockwaves because you guys would know that this dude is a bona fide killer. So one day I had to do, it's called census count, but we call it as slang senseless count. So it was this black hand, right? Now, during census count, it's like just this stupid accountability check. We call it senseless, right? So you have to go to your cell and, the officer goes around and does his thing. So I was coming up to the black hand cell And so as I approached this cell, I was on the top tier, like in the corner, and I could see him running down towards the cell. And then so he went in the cell, right? And so I had to, hold him accountable. So I was like, hey, OG, I got to have you in here, man, during the census. You can't be, somewhere else. And this dude, he's a bona fide killer, dude. Like, you snap his hand, people will put in work. And he was like respectful, you know what I'm saying? But that's usually, sometimes they can be a little honorary, but for the most part, you're not going to really get trouble out of them. So I kid you not, man, this black hand, he was like, hey, my bad, CO, you caught me slipping, man. It won't happen again. And it never happened again. You know what I'm saying? So that's a huge difference, man. Like, again, in the state prison at the time, before things are the way they are, wasn't no black hands, you know what I'm saying, walking on the yard, or no AB leadership, or no, black leadership. They weren't walking the yard. They was locked away. Now, let me tell you a little extra story about this, this same black hand, because y'all should know me by now. I'm going to be myself. I'm a little off in the head, whatever. But I had a conversation with this same black hand, but it was not the same day. It was like a different day, because I was working the block that he was in. And so I think there might have been 2 black hands in that unit when I was in there. So I was working the block. And so I went up to him. I was like, hey, man, I got a question for you. And I was like, it might sound silly, but, I got a question. So he was just like, okay, shoot, Holmes, what do you got? Something to that effect. So I just asked him straight up, because I'm going to treat, you already know, I'm going to treat the inmates, they're humans, they're men, I'm going to treat them with respect. So I just asked him, what prison system would you rather do time in? Would you rather do time in the state prison, or would you rather do time in the federal prison? And it didn't take long for him to think. He was like, oh, man, I'd rather do it in the feds, because he was like, I'm not locked away in isolation. I'm out. I'm talking to you out in the open. You know what I'm saying? I could be chilling with my homies on the yard, this, that, and the other. You got a certain level of freedom here. And, that is a huge difference. But now I know it's different, that they're not using SHU in the same way that they used to use it. Okay, so here's another big difference. In the state prison, the inmates, they can buy TVs, like little personal TVs. I think it has like a clear, like, exterior and the back. So that way, you allegedly can't hide stuff, but they still do it anyways. But in the state prison, they'll give you, you can buy the TVs. But in the feds, it's not like that. What you would have to do in the feds, right? You buy a MP3 player, whatever. Or no, wait, it's either an MP3 player or it's a radio. And then you tune into the frequency of the TV. So let's say you'll be in the middle of the unit. We call it on the flats. And so you will have like different screens of TVs pointing in different directions, and it's on a mount. So you can't hear the TV unless you're tuned in to that frequency. So either you can get the frequency through the MP3 player, or you get it through the radio, whichever one. But you will sit there and you'll watch TV. And it's just kind of funny, because you don't hear any TVs, but you'll see dudes just looking up, watching the game or whatever. Now, one thing that's serious, and I don't know if I could say it's that serious in the state, but I know on the Fed side, one thing that's serious, you better not turn that channel. You better not touch that remote, because if you don't have clearance to touch that remote, you're going to get got. And there's been instances, man, I can't speak on it, where, there were some inmates that have been unalived for that. So just making that clear. Now, here's an unsaid rule. And this AW, man, and the AW had like, I don't know, like a gang of time in at the time. He ended up retiring. He had like 30 years or something. But it was weird, because I don't think he came up, as a CO, working the block first before he did specialty stuff. So one of the unset rules is you'll have the inmates, right? They'll sit down in their chairs, and then like maybe a few feet in front of them, you'll have the TVs that's mounted up, and they kind of look up and watch the TV. So wherever the inmates are sitting, well, I'll say this, the difference or the distance between them sitting and where the TV is and mounted, that space, it's kind of like an unsaid no-fly zone. Now, this is not something that's in policy. This is not something that I think you could even be wrote up with DHO for, but it's just an unsaid rule. It's just as a sign of respect, right? So sometimes you may have rookies that don't know any better, and they might get up, go out from their office to make some rounds, and sometimes they might walk through that space between the inmates and the TV, and the inmates, they get all out, hey, man, get out the way, this, that, and the other, right? Again, this is an unsaid thing. It is what it is. So you have this AW, for whatever reason, he came in, walked in the unit, doing his rounds, whatever. And so this fool went from the front door to walk over to my office, and this fool, there was all kind of space to walk behind the inmates to get to, you know what I'm saying, my office. But this dude made a beeline from the front door and walked in front of like several TVs. And of course, you know, you heard it from the inmates, hey, man, get out the way, this, that, and the other, right? So it's just, it is what it is. If you've been inside, then you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's another big difference. There's no, now that, you know, they have tablets where you can purchase them for whatever the price is. And, you know, you can watch your movies, your games, and whatever else you find a way to hack on it or whatever it is, right? I don't know if the TVs will be phased away. I have no idea, but that's another difference. All right, so the next part that we're going to talk about is the separation between two different categories, right? So again, you have your officers in the state, and then you have your free staff. They're totally separate. One gets involved, one doesn't. Now, on the Fed side, you have what's called custody, and then you have what's called non-custody. Now, it's kind of weird, and, you know, there's all these different beefs between the officers. All this is public knowledge. I'm not giving up nothing internal or anything like that. But essentially, like, if you were to look at it as the state, right, the COs would be considered the custody, and the free staff would be considered the non-custody. However, in the feds, the non-custody, you're still officers. So you can respond. You can work the block. You know what I'm saying? You can work overtime. You can take, you know, med trips, flights, all that stuff you can do, right? So that's a big thing, because some people, they don't understand, because again, you know, you'll have officers that'll be in their uniform working, but then you can have a teacher or a psychologist that just got done with their job, and they could be in a shirt and a tie and slacks or cargo pants, whatever it is. And when they get done teaching or doing their counseling, whatever, they can come in the block and they can work overtime. They can work in the towers. If they got to, you know, get down in the tower and drop some bombs or, you know, let off a round or two, they're able to do that. So I know that's kind of a concept that, you know, a lot of people may not understand, because it's talked about in the news, it's talked about in the newspaper side. Again, this is common knowledge, but a lot of people, they don't understand how that works. But it's just, you know, when officers, when they get hired, everybody that gets hired, they all have to go through the same training. And they go away for their training, and then they all come back. So that way they're proficient, well, allegedly proficient with self-defense, you know, shooting, policy, all those different things. So I know it's kind of weird, like custody, non-custody, because I remember I was talking to my cousin about it, or my wife was talking to my cousin about it, because she works for the state. And she was like, well, he's non-custody? So does he get the, she was like, yeah, everything that y'all do, they do. It's just, you know, so I know it can be confusing to certain people, but that is a big difference. But yeah, even though you have your custody and your non-custody, all of them are officers. It's just, you have one set of people, staff, that just work the unit, and then you have the other staff, non-custody, that has some type of specialty job or specialty trade. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing, right? So let's say, for instance, right, all your plumbers, your electricians, your HVAC people, your general maintenance, all those people, right? They're all considered officers. So they can respond to the fights, they can work the units, all of that stuff. Now let's move on to the next. Now, one of the other noticeable differences in the state prison, from what I understand, you're able to, the inmates can order like, I think like KFC, Domino's Pizza, and like a few other places. Now, I don't know how often they can order it and how much they can order it, but they can get food from outside, you know what I'm saying, restaurants. Again, I don't know what the standards are. I don't know what the policy is on that, but they can order from different, you know, food places on the streets, and then it comes in. Now, is it hot? Is it all that? I have no idea. I would imagine it's probably not, but hey, you know, if you're in prison, you know, eating I won't say a cold slice, but even if it was cold, you already know the inmates be cooking, so they can find a way to heat up the pizza. Well, in the feds, they don't have that. Ain't no, you know, we're going to order from Wingstop, you know, or we're going to order from whatever and bring it in. That just doesn't work. Now, another thing that is different, conjugal visits. Now, the state prison, they have conjugal visits. Now, I don't know how often they have it or what the criteria is, but I do know that they do have conjugal visits in the state. But in the feds, you don't have conjugal visits, or you're not supposed to. Now, I say this right now. Of course, there could be some type of possible constitutional violations, but in my opinion, as a private citizen, I would say I kind of wish that the federal side would have conjugal visits and maybe use that as a tool to try to, kind of mess with the gangs, bust them up, different things like that. Because maybe you could set up a certain criteria to say, okay, this person, that person, whatever, they can receive conjugal visits, 18 months, maybe no incidents, no write-ups, no shots, and then several other things, right? Now, just think about it. Let's just say, you got your, criminal investigators, SIS. Again, that's public knowledge. That is not a secret, right? So let's just say, for instance, that they're trying to work on trying to dismantle a gang, or, it'll never happen, but just trying to cause dissension or getting people to defect. I think conjugal visits could possibly be, an effective tool to use to try to say, hey, man, you tired of living that life, this, that, and the other. And, your other homie that walked out, that same dude, he checked in, but, he getting that booty. I know it sounds crazy, right? But just, there can be effective tools because, you have CIs in prison. Now, I can't really get into that, but, with CIs, they end up having certain privileges that a normal person would not have, or a normal inmate would not have. So on the state side, you have the conjugal visits, but on the Fed side, you do not. All right, so here's another big difference, right? In the federal prison, it's a little more. Now, if you're at a USP, then that's going to be different, but it's still, because I've worked at a USP, so it's different, but then it's still kind of similar. So when you're a custody officer, right, and you're working on the block, the inmates, they're not going to talk to you. They're not supposed to, right? They may talk a little bit. Hey, what's going on? So-and-so, what you think about that game, this, that, and the other. Because I've done that. I've had casual conversations, but you don't just sit there and chop it up, because that's going to look bad on you and bad on your car. So while you're a CO, you can't expect a lot of interaction. And that's not disrespect. That's just their rules. But if you're an officer and you cross over from custody to non-custody, it takes on a totally different effect, because when you become non-custody, you're going to have inmates that are on your work detail. And let's just keep this real. Let's keep it a buck. When you have inmates on, whether you in the state or whatever, if you have inmates that are on your detail and they're assisting you with the orderly running of whatever your job or title is, those inmates are making you look good, right? They're doing a lot of work, right, to make you look good, to help you get good evals, all that kind of stuff. So the interactions, they changed quite noticeably. And I know I noticed it because when I was CO, custody, they didn't really talk a little bit. Now, the ones that had more juice and they were OGs, they could talk a little more, but for the most part, no. But when you cross over to non-custody, it is a totally different ball game, because it's like you're still a CO, you're still an enforcer, all that kind of stuff, but the dynamics are a little different. You're not compromised, nothing like that, but it's just your interactions, they're going to be different. So that's a huge difference, right? But in the state, from what I understand, especially at your level 4s, from what I'm being told, they don't talk to the COs really much at all. And then from what I understand, like your free staff, I think the inmates, they talk to the free staff more. They'll be a little more friendlier with them, or they'll engage with them differently because, their mission as free staff is different. So it's that same thought process when it comes to non-custody in the federal prison, because you might be helping them obtain their GED. You might be trying to help them lose weight in recreation, or, you might be trying to help them with their culinary skills in some type of apprentice program, or whatever the case may be. So it's a different dynamic. So I would definitely say on the federal side, the interactions between inmates and the staff are definitely totally different from what I understand compared to the state prison. All right, so here's the last thing that I'm going to talk about, and then we'll, I'll do some more videos. The politics, it is a lot different because in the state of California, right, your politics will consist of, well, you know what? I'm going to say that for another video. I'm going to do that in another video so that way I can provide you some good and consistent content. So scratch that, motion to strike, Your Honor. But anyways, hopefully you got some type of edification out of this video because, again, there are a lot of people that they really don't know that there is a big noticeable difference between doing time in a state of California prison and then doing time on the federal side in the state of California. So, yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that. But I can tell you, this is groundbreaking. I can't think of any active CO, but in this capacity, I'm a private citizen. But I can't think of any person that can provide, the type of stuff that I'm able to provide in terms of like telling what the differences are and just different things that are of public concern. So again, read that disclaimer down at the bottom. You can read. If you can't read, get somebody that can read for you. That'll show you. So until the next one, and I'm going to bring some heat, holla at your boy.